The folded American flag felt heavier than it should have. I stood at my father's grave in Cedar Ridge, Colorado, gripping the triangle of fabric while the November wind bit through my coat. My stepmother kept her eyes down. My little sister sobbed into her hands. And Emily? My stepsister stood 15 feet away, perfectly still. No tears, no trembling, just watching. Cedar Ridge is the kind of town where everyone knows your business before you do, where the local diner posts obituaries on a cork board next to the daily specials. Where funerals aren't just family affairs, they're community events. So when Mark Carter, beloved bank manager and Little League coach, was laid to rest, half the town showed up. The high school principal, the grocery store owner, even Sheriff Daniels, who'd arrested my father 3 years earlier. They all came to pay respects to a man they'd once called a thief. My father died of a heart attack in prison. That's what the official report said. 52 years old, no prior heart conditions, just gone. I didn't believe it then. I don't believe it now. But standing there, watching them lower his casket into frozen ground, I wasn't thinking about conspiracy theories or suspicious timing. I was thinking about the last thing he'd said to me during our final phone call. If something happens to me, he'd whispered, his voice strained through the prison line. Don't trust anyone. Not even family. I thought he was being paranoid. Prison does that to people. I was wrong. The service ended with a prayer I didn't hear. My mind was somewhere else, replaying every moment of the past 3 years. The arrest, the trial, the conviction. My father's hollow eyes as they led him away in handcuffs. People began filing past, offering condolences that felt rehearsed. Hollow. Some of them had stopped talking to us the day the FBI showed up at our door. That's when Gerald Mitchum approached. He'd worked with my father at Cedar Ridge Community Bank for over a decade. Quiet guy. The kind who kept his head down and his opinions to himself. I'd seen him at the back of the service, standing apart from the others. He waited until most of the crowd had dispersed. Then he leaned close, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Your father didn't do it. 4 words. Soft. Deliberate. I looked at him, confused. What? Gerald glanced around, making sure no one was listening. His hands were shoved deep in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. The embezzlement. Mark didn't make those transactions. He paused, weighing his next words carefully. Someone close to him did. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Ask yourself who had access to his login codes, Gerald said quietly. There were only 3 people who knew them. He didn't wait for my response, just gave me a meaningful look, nodded once, and walked away. 3 people. My father, my stepmother, B, and Emily. I stood there frozen as the implications crashed over me like a wave. The November wind whipped through the cemetery, carrying away the last whispers of conversation as people headed back to their cars. That's when I noticed her. Emily hadn't moved. She was still standing in the same spot several yards away, hands folded in front of her like she was posing for a photograph. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her black dress was perfectly pressed. She looked composed, elegant, untouched. Our eyes met across the distance, and then she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a sad, sympathetic, we're in this together smile. It was something else, something that made my skin crawl. I felt my stepmother's hand on my shoulder. Sweetheart, we should go, she said softly. Her voice was shaking. It's getting cold. But when I turned to look at her, she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at the ground, her face pale, her jaw tight. She looked terrified. My little sister, Becca, tugged at my coat. Can we go home now? She asked, her voice small and broken. She was only 12, too young to understand the weight of what we'd lost. Too young to know that our father hadn't just died, he'd been destroyed. I nodded, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Yeah, let's go. But as we walked toward the parking lot, I couldn't stop thinking about Gerald's words. Someone close to him did. I glanced back one more time. Emily was still standing there, watching us leave. The wind pulled at her dress, but she didn't move, didn't blink. She looked like she was waiting for something. Or maybe she was making sure something stayed buried. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet. My stepmother had locked herself in her room. Becca had cried herself to sleep, and I couldn't stop replaying the funeral in my mind. Emily's expression, Gerald's warning, my stepmother's fear. None of it made sense. But somewhere, deep in my gut, a knot of dread was forming. Because if my father didn't embezzle that money, then someone framed him. Someone who knew him well enough to access his accounts. Someone who knew exactly how to make it look real. Someone in our family. I grabbed my phone and opened the browser, typing in the case details I'd memorized years ago. The transactions, the dates, the amounts. $847,000 transferred over 6 months to offshore accounts my father swore he'd never opened. The prosecution had called it a calculated scheme. The defense had called it circumstantial. The jury had called it guilty. But Gerald had called it a lie. And if he was right, then everything I thought I knew about the past 3 years was wrong. I thought about Emily, about how she'd changed after her biological father came back into our lives, about the late-night phone calls she'd hide, about the way she'd started working at the bank during her senior year of high school, an internship my father had helped her get, an internship that gave her access. My chest tightened. No, it couldn't be. Emily was my sister. She'd braided Becca's hair before school. She'd made us cookies on rainy days. She'd been good, but people change. And I was starting to realize I didn't know her at all. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures from before, from when things were astonishingly normal. There's one I keep coming back to. Emily's 17 in the photo, standing in our kitchen with flour on her cheek and a spatula in her hand. Becca's next to her, grinning with chocolate on her face. They're making cupcakes for the school bake sale. Emily's smiling, a real smile. The kind that reaches your eyes and makes you believe the world is a good place. I remember that day clearly. It was spring. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter. Emily had just gotten accepted to 3 universities on full academic scholarships. Mom was so proud she cried. That was the Emily I grew up with. The one who remembered everyone's birthday and left handwritten notes in lunch boxes. The one who stayed up past midnight helping me with algebra homework, even though she had cheerleading practice at 6 in the morning. She wasn't just my stepsister. She was my hero. When my dad married my stepmother, Lisa, I was 7 years old. Emily was 10. She could have resented us, the new family that replaced the father who'd abandoned her. But she didn't. Instead, she welcomed us. "You're gonna love it here," she told me on the day we moved in, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward her room. "We can share everything, except my stuffed elephant. That's Mr. Pickles, and he's non-negotiable." I'd laughed. And just like that, I had a sister. For 8 years, Emily was everything a big sister should be. She taught Becca how to French braid. She drove us to soccer practice and made sure we always had snacks. During the Cedar Ridge High School Carnival every October, she'd work the PTA booth and sneak us extra tickets for the Ferris wheel. Everyone in town loved her. Emily Carter, straight A student, varsity cheer captain, volunteer at the community center. The kind of kid parents point to and say, "Why can't you be more like her?" But then, he came back. Raymond Hale. I'd never heard his name until I was 15. Mom didn't talk about him. Ever. If anyone asked about Emily's father, she'd just say, "He's not in the picture," and change the subject. We knew better than to push. But one night during dinner, Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and went completely pale. "I need to take this," she said quietly, standing up from the table. Dad, Mark, frowned. "Can it wait until after dinner?" "No," Emily said, her voice strange, flat. "It can't." She disappeared into her room and locked the door. 20 minutes later, when she came out, her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Who was that?" Mom asked gently. Emily looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "My father." The room went silent. Mom's fork clattered against her plate, her face drained of color. "What?" "Raymond called me," Emily said, her voice shaking. "He wants to meet." I watched my stepmother's hands tremble. She looked terrified. "No," she said firmly. "Absolutely not." "He's my father," Emily shot back, something hard creeping into her tone. "I have a right to know him." "You don't understand what you're asking," Mom said, standing up. "That man is dangerous, Emily. He's manipulative and— And what? He abandoned me?" Emily's voice cracked. "I know. But maybe he's changed. Maybe he wants to make things right." Dad tried to intervene. "Emily, honey, your mom knows him better than any of us. If she says—" "You're not my father," Emily snapped. The words hung in the air like poison. Dad flinched. I saw the hurt flash across his face before he carefully smoothed it away. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm not. But I love you like you're mine. And I don't want to see you get hurt." Emily's jaw tightened. She looked at Mom. "Did you tell him not to contact me?" Mom hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. "I can't believe you," Emily whispered. Then she turned and walked out. That was the beginning of the end. Over the next few months, Emily changed. Slowly at first, then all at once. The late-night phone calls became routine. She'd lock herself in her room for hours, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd just say, "A friend." But I knew better. She started pulling away from us, from family dinners, from movie nights, from the little rituals that had always held us together. Mom tried to reach her. "Sweetheart, please," she'd say, standing outside Emily's locked door. "Just talk to me. Tell me what he's saying to you." "He's not saying anything bad," Emily would reply, her voice muffled. "He just wants to get to know me. Is that so wrong?" "Yes," Mom would whisper, "yes. Because he doesn't want to know you, Emily. He wants to use you." But Emily didn't believe her. I didn't understand it then. Didn't understand how a girl as smart as Emily could fall for manipulation. But now, looking back, I see it clearly. Raymond knew exactly what to say. He told her she was special, told her she deserved more than the ordinary life we were giving her, told her that her mother had poisoned her against him, but he'd never stopped loving her. And Emily. She wanted so desperately to believe him. One night, I woke up to the sound of crying. It was coming from Emily's room. I crept down the hall and pressed my ear against her door. "I'm trying," she was saying, her voice thick with tears. "I'm doing everything you asked, but it's hard. They don't understand." Silence. She was listening to someone on the phone. "I know," she whispered. "I know you're proud of me. I want to make you happy." More silence, then, "Okay, I'll do it. I promise." I should have knocked, should have asked her what she was promising to do, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to bed and told myself it was none of my business. God, I wish I'd been braver. Around the same time, I started noticing things. Small things. Letters tucked under Emily's mattress, always in the same handwriting. Envelopes with no return address. Mom pacing the kitchen late at night, staring at her phone like she was waiting for bad news. Dad coming home from the bank looking exhausted, rubbing his temples like he had a headache that wouldn't quit. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way our house had started to feel. Fragile. Like one wrong word would shatter everything. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from soccer practice. Mom was in the living room, holding a letter. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. "Mom," I said softly. She looked up, startled. Quickly, she folded the letter and shoved it into her pocket. "You're home early," she said, forcing a smile. "Coach canceled practice. What's that?" "Nothing, just junk mail." But her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Mom, what's going on?" She shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. "It's nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart. I'm handling it." "Handling what?" She didn't answer, just walked past me and locked herself in her bedroom. I stood there, alone in the living room, feeling the walls close in. That night, at dinner, Emily barely spoke. She picked at her food, glancing at Mom every few seconds like she was waiting for something. Mom wouldn't look at her. And Dad. Dad looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. "Everything okay at the bank?" Mom asked quietly. Dad nodded. "Fine. Just a long day." But his hands were clenched so tightly around his fork that his knuckles were white. I wanted to ask what was happening, wanted to demand answers, but I was 15 and scared, so I stayed silent. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment everything started to crumble. Emily wasn't my sister anymore. She was someone else, someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd chosen a man she barely knew over the family who'd loved her for 8 years. And the worst part? I didn't even try to stop her. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when the FBI came. 3 black SUVs, no sirens. Just the quiet crunch of tires on gravel and the sound of car doors slamming in unison. Mom looked out the window and went completely still. "Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Dad was upstairs getting ready for work. He came down the stairs, adjusting his tie, and froze when he saw Mom's face. "Lisa, what's wrong?" She pointed toward the window. Dad walked over, looked out, and I watched all the color drain from his face. "Stay here," he said quietly. "All of you." But I followed him to the front door anyway. I needed to see, needed to understand why federal agents were standing on our porch at 7 in the morning. Dad opened the door before they could knock. "Mark Carter?" the lead agent asked, holding up a badge. "Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering." The agent's voice was flat, rehearsed. "You have the right to remain silent." The rest of the words blurred together. I stood there, frozen, watching them handcuff my father in our front hallway, watching him keep his eyes down like he was ashamed, watching Mom cover her mouth with both hands to keep from screaming. And Emily? She stood at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, completely still. No shock, no tears, just watching. "Dad didn't do anything," I shouted at the agents. "There's a mistake." One of them looked at me with something like pity. "Step back, please." They led him outside in handcuffs. Our neighbors were already gathering on their lawns, phones out, filming. The Hendersons, the Pritchards, Mrs. Yang from across the street. By noon, it would be all over Facebook. By dinner, the entire town would know. Dad looked back at us one last time before they put him in the SUV. His eyes found mine, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Fear, not fear of prison, not fear of the charges. He was afraid. For us, the SUV doors slammed shut, the engine started, and just like that, they were gone. Mom collapsed onto the porch steps, sobbing into her hands. Becca ran to her, wrapping her small arms around her shoulders. I looked up at Emily, still standing at the top of the stairs. "Em," I said, my voice shaking, "what just happened?" She blinked slowly, like she was waking up from a dream. "I don't know," she said softly. But there was something wrong with the way she said it. Something Rehearsed. Like she'd been practicing that answer. The charges were all over the news by that afternoon. Cedar Ridge bank manager arrested for embezzlement of over $800,000. They showed his employee photo, listed the accusations, called him a trusted community figure who'd betrayed the public's confidence. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, neighbors, people Dad had coached in Little League, suddenly acting like they'd always known something was off about him. Mom stopped answering after the 10th call. We sat in the living room in silence, the TV playing footage of the bank on repeat. Cedar Ridge Community Bank, the place Dad had worked for 18 years. The place he'd taken me when I was little, letting me sit in his office chair and pretend I was important. He didn't do this, Mom whispered. He wouldn't. But her voice didn't sound convinced. It sounded broken. Emily was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at nothing. I said quietly, you worked at the bank last summer. Did you ever see Dad do anything weird? She looked at me with those cold, unreadable eyes. No, she said, but I guess we don't really know people as well as we think we do. The words felt like a slap. Dad's arraignment was set for the following Monday. Mom hired a lawyer we couldn't afford. The bank froze our accounts. Suddenly we were living on credit cards and whatever cash Mom had hidden in the house. The town turned on us overnight. Someone spray-painted "thief" on our garage door. Parents pulled their kids out of Becca's soccer carpool. The principal called Mom in for a meeting about how the scandal was affecting school morale. I stopped going to lunch, stopped making eye contact in the hallways, because everywhere I went, I could feel people staring, whispering, "That's the embezzler's daughter. Can you believe he stole from his own bank?" I heard the family's broke now. Serves them right. But the worst part wasn't the gossip. It was Emily. She went to school like nothing had happened, smiled at her friends, laughed in the hallways, posted photos on Instagram like our entire world wasn't falling apart. One afternoon, I found her in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. "How are you so calm?" I asked, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. She looked up, unbothered. "What do you want me to do? Fall apart? That won't help anyone." "Our dad is in jail, Emily. Doesn't that bother you?" "He's not my dad," she said simply. "He's yours." The words hit like a knife. "He's been more of a father to you than Raymond ever was," I said, my voice shaking. Emily's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my relationship with Raymond. I know he abandoned you. I know Mom said he was dangerous. I know he only came back when..." I stopped, something clicking in my mind. "Wait, when did Raymond contact you?" Emily's expression shifted, just for a second, but I saw it. Panic. "Why does that matter?" she asked, her voice too casual. "When, Emily?" She stood up, grabbing her phone. "I don't have to explain myself to you." She left the room before I could press further. Dad's first phone call from jail came 3 days after his arrest. Mom let me speak to him. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "Sweetheart?" Dad's voice crackled through the line. He sounded exhausted, hollow. "Dad, My voice broke. "I don't understand what's happening. I know. And I'm so sorry." He took a shaky breath. "But you have to listen to me very carefully. I didn't steal that money. I didn't make those transactions." "Then who did?" Silence. "Dad?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "But someone had access to my login codes, someone who knew the system well enough to cover their tracks." My heart started pounding. "Who had your codes?" "Only 2 people. Your mother, Time, Ones, and Emily." The air left my lungs. "Emily wouldn't..." "I'm not saying she did," Dad said quickly. "I'm just telling you the facts. The lawyer says the prosecution has emails, transaction records, digital fingerprints. Everything points to me. But I swear, on my life, I didn't do this." "We'll prove it," I said, tears streaming down my face. We'll find out who really. Listen to me, Dad interrupted, his voice urgent. If something happens to me, you need to protect yourself, protect your sister, and be careful who you trust. What does that mean? It means not everyone in our family is who you think they are. The line went dead. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Dad's words. Not everyone in our family is who you think they are. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I cracked my door open and saw Emily sneaking downstairs, phone pressed to her ear. I followed, staying in the shadows. She went out to the back porch, sliding the door shut behind her. I crept to the window and watched her pace back and forth, speaking in hushed tones. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. It's done, she said quietly. The accounts are frozen. He's not getting out anytime soon. My blood went cold. I know it was hard, she continued, her voice softer now. But you were right. He had to fall. There was no other way. She paused, listening. Then, I love you too. She hung up and stood there for a moment, staring out at the dark yard. And then, she smiled. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break through my chest. He had to fall. Emily didn't just know about the embezzlement. She was part of it. I didn't confront Emily that night. I should have. Should have burst through the door and demanded answers. But I was 17 and terrified, and I didn't know what to do with the truth I'd just heard. So I did nothing. Instead, I went to Mom. I found her the next morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. The house was quiet. Emily had already left for school. Becca was still asleep upstairs. Mom, I said quietly, sliding into the chair across from her. We need to talk about Emily. She didn't look up. Not now, sweetheart. Yes, now. My voice was firmer than I expected. I heard her last night, on the phone. She said something about Dad. About him having to fall. Mom's hands tightened around her coffee mug. You don't understand what you heard. Then help me understand. She finally looked at me, and I was shocked by how old she looked, how defeated. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the strong, capable mother I'd grown up with. She was someone hollowed out, broken. Raymond did this, she whispered. Raymond? Emily's... Yes. She closed her eyes. Her father. He's the reason all of this happened. I don't understand. How? Mom took a shaky breath. Raymond Hale is not a good man. I knew that when I left him 15 years ago. He was controlling, manipulative, dangerous in ways I didn't fully understand until it was almost too late. She paused, staring into her coffee like it held answers she couldn't find. When Emily was 2, I took her and ran, changed our names, started over in Cedar Ridge. I thought we were safe. I thought he'd moved on. But he didn't. No, her voice cracked. He spent years looking for us. And when he finally found us, he realized he could use Emily. My stomach turned. Use her how? Mom's eyes filled with tears. He told her I'd stolen her from him, that I'd poisoned her against him, that I was weak and that she deserved better than the life I could give her. She wiped her eyes with trembling hands. He told her that if she really loved him, she'd prove it. Prove it how? Mom looked at me, and I saw the guilt writ all over her face. By helping him destroy Mark. The words hung in the air like smoke. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why would he want to destroy Dad? Because Mark protected us, because he gave us stability and safety and a life Raymond couldn't control. She took a shaky breath. Raymond doesn't love Emily. He loves power, and the best way to have power over me was to use my daughter against the man I married. I felt sick. And Emily just went along with it? She's a child, Mom said, her voice breaking. A child who wanted her father's approval more than anything in the world. Raymond knew that. He exploited it. Over the next hour, Mom told me everything. How Raymond had contacted Emily 2 years ago through social media. How he'd started slowly, just messages at first, innocent questions about her life, then phone calls, then meetings Mom didn't know about until it was too late. Raymond told Emily she was special, told her she was too smart for a small town like Cedar Ridge, told her she deserved scholarships and opportunities and a future bigger than anything we could give her. And then he told her what she had to do to earn it. He coached her, Mom said quietly, taught her how to use Mark's login codes, how to make transactions look legitimate, how to hide the digital trail. But how did she get his codes in the first place? Mark gave them to her, Mom said, her voice filled with regret. When Emily got her internship at the bank, she told him she needed access to run reports for her supervisor. Mark trusted her. He never thought she'd use it against him. I felt like I was going to be sick. And you knew about this? Mom's face crumbled. Not at first. I didn't know until after the arrest. Emily, she confessed to me one night. She was crying, saying she didn't want to do it. But Raymond told her it was the only way. The only way to what? To prove she was loyal. To prove she wasn't weak like me. Mom's voice was barely audible now. She thought if she did the one thing, Raymond would finally love her. Finally be the father she'd always wanted. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. You've known this whole time and you didn't say anything? What was I supposed to say? Mom's voice rose, desperate. That my daughter framed my husband? That I let it happen because I was too afraid. Of what Raymond would do if I stopped it? Yes, I shouted. You should have told the truth. You should have protected Dad. He threatened to kill me, Mom said flatly. The room went silent. What? Raymond. Her voice was hollow now, empty. He said if I told anyone what Emily had done, he'd make sure I disappeared. That he'd take both you and Becca and I'd never see you again. Tears streamed down her face. So I stayed quiet. I let Mark go to prison. I let him take the fall because I was too weak to fight back. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My father was rotting in a jail cell for a crime he didn't commit. And my mother had known the truth all along. That evening, I went into Emily's room while she was at cheer practice. I'd never snooped through her things before. It felt wrong, but nothing about our lives was right anymore. I started with her desk, drawers full of perfect homework assignments and college acceptance letters. A planner with color-coded schedules. Everything organized. Everything controlled. Then I checked under her mattress. That's where I found the letters, dozens of them, all in the same handwriting, all from Raymond. You're doing so well, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Remember, loyalty is everything. Family protects family. Mark Carter stole the life I should have had with you and your mother. It's only fair that he pays for that. Once this is over, we'll be together, just you and me, the way it should have been from the beginning. I felt bile rise in my throat, but it was the envelope at the bottom of the stack that made my hands shake. It was thick, heavy. I opened it. Cash. Hundreds of dollars in crisp bills, bundled together with a rubber band. And a note. For my brilliant girl, you've earned this. I stood there, holding the evidence, and felt something shift inside me. Emily hadn't just been manipulated. She'd been compensated. I heard the front door open downstairs, Emily's voice calling out that she was home. Quickly, I shoved everything back under the mattress and slipped out of her room. But I didn't go downstairs. Instead, I went to my room and sat on my bed, staring at the wall. My sister, the girl who used to braid Becca's hair and sneak me extra cupcakes, had destroyed our father's life. For money, for approval, for a man who saw her as nothing more than a weapon. And the worst part? She thought she'd gotten away with it. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard her humming as she walked past my door. She sounded happy. I thought about Dad, alone in a cell, taking the blame for something he didn't do. I thought about Mom, too broken to fight back. I thought about Becca, who'd lost her father and didn't even understand why. And I thought about Emily, sleeping soundly every night while our family fell apart around her. Something hardened inside me. She thought this was over. She thought she was safe. But I'd found the letters. I'd seen the money. I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. 3 days passed before I made my move. 3 days of watching Emily smile at breakfast. 3 days of hearing her laugh on the phone with friends. 3 days of pretending I didn't know what she'd done. But I needed proof. Real proof. Not just letters and cash hidden under a mattress. Something undeniable. Something that would hold up in court. Dad's lawyer had filed an appeal, arguing the evidence was circumstantial. But without proof that someone else had accessed his accounts, the case was going nowhere. I knew Emily had that proof. Somewhere. I just had to find it. The opportunity came on a Saturday afternoon. Emily had cheer competition in Denver. Mom drove her and Becca, planning to make a day of it. They wouldn't be back until late. I told them I had too much homework, needed to stay home. Mom hesitated at the door, looking at me with worried eyes. "You sure you'll be okay? Alone?" "I'll be fine," I said, forcing a smile. Emily barely glanced at me as they left. She was too busy checking her makeup in her phone camera, making sure everything was perfect. The moment their car disappeared down the street, I moved. Emily's current laptop was password protected. I'd tried before and gotten nowhere, but I remembered she had an old one, from high school, that she'd stopped using after she got a new one, for college. I found it in the basement. Our basement was unfinished. Concrete floors, exposed beams, boxes stacked against walls, full of old Christmas decorations and forgotten memories. Emily's old laptop was in a cardboard box labeled HS Stuff, Keep. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. Please have something. Please. I carried it upstairs to the kitchen table, plugged it in, and held my breath as it powered on. No password screen appeared. She'd never locked it. The desktop was clean, organized. Folders labeled by year and subject. Study guides, essays, college application materials. Everything perfectly curated, perfectly controlled. I started clicking through folders, not sure what I was looking for. Then I saw it. A folder labeled Bank Internship Summer 2019. My heart started pounding. Inside were spreadsheets, dozens of them, transaction logs, account summaries, reports that looked official and professional. And then I found the one that didn't belong. It was titled Transfer Schedule Draft. I opened it. The spreadsheet was simple. 3 columns, date, amount, account number. I recognized the dates immediately. They matched the timeline of the embezzlement. June through November, 2 years ago. The amounts matched too. $15,000 here, $32,000 there. Small enough to avoid immediate detection, but large enough to add up fast. By the end of the spreadsheet, the total was $847,000. The exact amount my father had been accused of stealing. But here's what made my blood run cold. The file creation date was May 12, 2019. 6 weeks before the first transaction occurred. This wasn't a record of theft. It was a plan. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to breathe. Emily had known exactly what she was going to do, had mapped it out, had calculated every transfer down to the dollar. This wasn't some mistake, some accident. It was premeditated. I kept searching, my hands trembling so badly I could barely control the mouse. In another folder, I found bookmarked articles. saved web pages about financial fraud, about how banks track transactions, about digital forensics and how investigators trace money. She'd researched how to cover her tracks, and then I found something even worse, a saved news article from Emily's senior year of high school. The headline read, "Local Student Cleared of Scholarship Fraud Allegations." I remembered this vaguely. There'd been some controversy about Emily's scholarship application, something about falsified documents, but it had been dismissed. The school had said it was a misunderstanding, but here, in her bookmarks, Emily had saved the article with a note in the file name, "Lesson learned, better planning next time." She'd done this before, not as successfully, but she'd tried, and she'd learned from her mistakes. I was so focused on the screen that I didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear footsteps on the stairs, didn't realize I wasn't alone until Emily's voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing?" I looked up, my heart stopping. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, still in her cheer uniform. Her ponytail was slightly messy, makeup smudged from the competition. She must have forgotten something, must have come back while Mom and Becca stayed in Denver. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then her eyes dropped to the laptop screen. I watched the realization hit her, watched her face go pale, then cold. "That's mine," she said quietly. "I know. You had no right to go through my things, and you had no right to destroy our father's life." The words came out harder than I expected, angrier. Emily stepped into the kitchen, her jaw tight. "Close the laptop." "No. Close it. Now." "Why?" I stood up facing her. "Scared of what else I might find?" Her eyes flashed with something dangerous. "You don't know what you're looking at." "I know exactly what I'm looking at." My voice was shaking now, adrenaline coursing through me. "I'm looking at a spreadsheet you made 6 weeks before Dad was arrested. I'm looking at every transaction, every amount, every date. You planned this, Emily? You framed him? You don't understand. Then help me understand," I shouted. "Help me understand how you could do this to someone who loved you, someone who treated you like his own daughter." Emily's face twisted with something ugly, something I'd never seen before. "He wasn't my father," she said coldly. "He was just some man who married my mother. He was more of a father than Raymond ever was." Her hand shot out, slamming the laptop shut. So hard I flinched. "Don't talk about things you don't understand," she hissed. "I understand perfectly." I stepped closer, meeting her eyes. "Raymond manipulated you, made you think you had to prove something, and you were so desperate for his approval that you destroyed an innocent man." "Mark wasn't innocent," Emily said, her voice sharp. "He took my mother from my father. He took the life we should have had." "That's what Raymond told you, but it's a lie." "It's the truth." Her voice rose, cracking slightly. "My mother was weak. She ran away instead of fighting for our family. And Mark took advantage of that. He swooped in and played hero and stole everything that should have been ours." I stared at her, horrified. "You actually believe that?" "It's what happened." "No," I said quietly. "What happened is Raymond abandoned you, and when he realized he couldn't control Mom anymore, he used you to hurt her, to hurt all of us." Emily's expression flickered, just for a second. Doubt, pain. Then it hardened again. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain the spreadsheet, Emily." I gestured at the closed laptop. "Explain why you planned those transactions. Explain why you used Dad's login codes. Explain why you let him go to prison for something you did." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she looked at me with eyes that were completely empty. "Sometimes," she said softly, "you have to choose which family member gets sacrificed." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "What?" "Not everyone gets to win, Emily continued, her voice eerily calm. Sometimes someone has to fall so others can rise. Dad was in the way. His life. Or mine. I chose mine. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This wasn't Raymond controlling her. This was Emily, making a choice, owning it. You're a monster, I whispered. She smiled, a small, sad smile. Maybe, but I'm a monster who's going to Princeton on a full scholarship while you're stuck in this dying town. She picked up the laptop, tucking it under her arm. And there's nothing you can do about it. She turned to leave, and that's when I said it. Quiet, calm, final. Then I'll make you fall. Emily stopped, looked back at me. What did you say? You heard me. I met her eyes, and I felt something shift inside me. Something cold and determined. If you can sacrifice Dad, then I can sacrifice you. That's how this works, right? Someone has to fall? For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. You won't do anything, she said, but her voice wavered. You don't have the guts. Try me. We stood there, locked in a silent battle. Sisters who'd once braided each other's hair, who'd shared secrets and inside jokes and 1,000 small moments that used to mean everything. All of it gone now, burned away. Finally, Emily turned and walked upstairs. I heard her door slam, heard her lock it, and I stood in it, alone in the kitchen, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. But my mind was clear. I knew what I had to do. I spent the next week gathering everything. I took photos of the spreadsheet on Emily's laptop before she could delete it. Photographed the letters from Raymond, the cash envelope, the scholarship fraud article. I recorded the dates, the amounts, the account numbers. I documented everything. Then I went to Mom. I need you to write down what you told me, I said, sliding a notebook across the kitchen table. About Raymond, about how he manipulated Emily, about how you knew Dad was innocent. Mom's hands trembled as she picked up the pen. If I do this, if I put this in writing, Raymond can't hurt us anymore, I said quietly. Not if we expose what he did, what Emily did. She's still my daughter, Mom whispered, and Dad was still your husband. Mom closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then she started writing. I created a file. A complete dossier of evidence, timeline of events, screenshots of the spreadsheet, photos of Raymond's letters, Mom's written confession about the manipulation and threats, copies of Dad's login records showing when Emily had access. Everything organized, everything documented, everything irrefutable. If Emily could frame a man with evidence, then I could take down a girl the same way. I sat at my computer late one night, staring at the file. My finger hovered over the mouse. One click, and Emily's future would be over. One click, and everything she'd worked for would disappear. One click, and I'd become just like her. The thought made me pause. Was this justice? Or was it revenge? Did it matter? I thought about Dad sitting in a prison cell. I thought about the life Emily had stolen from him, from all of us, and I clicked send. My first email went to Princeton University's admissions office. Subject: Ethics Violation Report. Emily Carter, Class of 2024. I attached the scholarship fraud article, the spreadsheet, screenshots showing she'd planned financial crimes while still a high school student. I didn't sign my name, didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. My second email went to the Cedar Ridge Community Bank's ethics hotline. Subject: Former intern involved in 2019 embezzlement case. I attached everything: the transaction timeline, the proof that Emily had access to Dad's login codes, Mom's statement about Raymond's coaching. I sent it anonymously, routing it through an email account I'd created specifically for this purpose. My third email went to the Colorado State Scholarship Commission. Emily had received $45,000 in state scholarship money for college. Money meant for students with financial need and demonstrated integrity. I explained exactly who Emily Carter really was. Then, I waited. The first crack appeared 3 days later. Emily came home from class looking pale, shaken. She went straight to her room without saying hello. An hour later, I heard her on the phone, her voice high and panicked. I don't understand. What do you mean under review? No, I never. That's not. Someone's lying about me. I stood outside her door, listening. Please, you have to believe me. I didn't do anything wrong. This is a mistake. Someone's trying to sabotage me. Her voice cracked. She was crying now. My entire scholarship? But I need that money. I can't afford Princeton without it. I walked away before she could hear me. Part of me felt guilty, felt cruel. But a larger part remembered Dad's face when they put him in handcuffs. The calls kept coming. First Princeton, then the bank's legal department, then the scholarship commission. Emily spent hours on the phone, explaining, defending, pleading. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed. Within a week, Princeton placed her acceptance under administrative review pending investigation of ethical violations. Her scholarship was frozen. Her summer internship at a Denver financial firm, the one she'd bragged about for months, sent her a terse email rescinding their offer. I know because I heard her sobbing in her room after she got the notification. The phone calls to Raymond became frantic. You said this was over, she'd hiss into her phone late at night. You said we were safe. How did they find out? I wondered if Raymond had answers for her, or if he'd already started distancing himself, the way manipulators do when their weapons stop being useful. Emily started to unravel. She stopped going to class, stopped eating. She'd sit at the kitchen table for hours, staring at her laptop, refreshing her email over and over, waiting for good news that never came. Mom tried to comfort her. Sweetheart, maybe if you just explained... Explained what? Emily snapped. That I'm innocent? I've been explaining. No one believes me. Maybe because you're not innocent, I said quietly from the doorway. Emily's head whipped around, her eyes blazing. What did you say? You heard me. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You think I did this? You think I actually stole that money? I met her eyes calmly. I know you did. You're insane. Am I? I stepped into the kitchen. Then explain the spreadsheet. Explain the timeline. Explain why every piece of evidence points back to you. Emily's face went white. How do you... She stopped, realization dawning. You sent those emails. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me! She lunged forward, grabbing my shoulders. What did you do? Mom pulled her back. Emily, stop! She ruined my life, Emily screamed, tears streaming down her face. She destroyed everything. I stayed calm, eerily calm. No, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. I just made sure people knew about it. Emily stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You're supposed to be my sister. I was, I said, until you stopped being mine. That night I heard Emily screaming at Mom. Who told them? Her voice was ragged, desperate. Who could possibly know about the laptop, about the letters, about... She stopped abruptly. The silence was deafening. Unless, Emily said slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. Unless you did. What? No, You wrote a statement, didn't you? Emily's voice was cold now, calculating. You told them about Raymond, about the manipulation. You betrayed your own daughter. I told the truth, Mom said, her voice shaking. The truth you should have told years ago. The sound of something shattering. A glass or a plate. I can't believe you, Emily sobbed. After everything I did. Everything I sacrificed. You sacrificed Mark, Mom shouted back, her voice finally breaking through. An innocent man, your stepfather, the man who loved you. He was in the way. In the way of what, Emily? Raymond's approval? A father who used you like a weapon? Silence. Then footsteps. Emily's door slamming. I sat on my bed listening to the chaos I'd created and felt nothing. Not guilt. Not satisfaction. Just a cold, hollow emptiness. By the end of the month, Emily's life had completely collapsed. Princeton officially revoked her acceptance. Not deferred. Revoked. Her scholarship money was returned to the state. She'd have to reapply next year, but everyone knew she'd be flagged in the system. Her internship was gone. Her reputation was shattered. The Cedar Ridge Facebook groups were full of gossip again. But this time, the target wasn't my father. It was Emily. Did you hear about the Carter girl? I always knew there was something off about her. Like father, like daughter, I guess. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, I found Emily sitting alone in her car in the driveway. She wasn't going anywhere, just sitting there, staring at nothing. I watched her from my bedroom window. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. And for just a moment, I felt something crack inside me. She looked broken, destroyed, exactly like I'd intended. But seeing it, actually watching her fall apart, felt different than I'd expected. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like grief. Because somewhere, buried under all the anger and betrayal, was the memory of the sister she used to be, the one who'd braided my hair and snuck me extra cupcakes. That girl was gone, and I'd helped bury her. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at the dossier one more time. There was one file I hadn't sent yet, the one addressed to the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit, the one with everything. Not just ethics violations or scholarship fraud, the one that could put Emily in prison, just like Dad. My finger hovered over the send button. One more click. That's all it would take. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the image of Emily crying in her car. Maybe it was the guilt creeping in at the edges. Or maybe it was knowing that what came next wouldn't just hurt Emily. It would destroy Mom, too. I closed the laptop. Not yet. Not until I was sure. I was sure the moment Mom came to my room at midnight. She didn't knock, just opened the door and stood there in the darkness, holding something in her hands. I need to give you something, she said quietly, before I lose my nerve. I sat up, turning on the lamp. Mom's face was pale, her eyes red from crying. What is it? She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. In her hands was an envelope. Old, worn, the kind that's been opened and reread 100 times. Your father gave this to me, she said, her voice trembling, the last time I visited him in prison, 2 weeks before he died. My heart stopped. What? He made me promise not to open it until after. She took a shaky breath. Until after he was gone. He said you'd need it when the time came. She held out the envelope. My name was written on the front in Dad's handwriting, neat, precise, the way he used to write notes for my lunchbox. I took it with shaking hands. Mom, what is this? Just read it, she whispered. And then you'll understand why I've been so afraid. She left before I could ask more questions. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the envelope, at my father's handwriting, at the seal that had been carefully placed and never broken. Then I opened it. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to protect you. Sorry I couldn't fix what was broken before it destroyed us all. But I need you to know the truth. I didn't die from a heart attack. Or if I did, it wasn't natural. There are ways to make these things happen, And Raymond Hale knows people who know how. I'm not being paranoid. I'm being realistic. The moment I figured out what Emily and Raymond had done, I became a liability. They couldn't risk me finding proof, couldn't risk me getting a new trial, so they silenced me. I know you probably don't believe this. It sounds like something from a movie, but I need you to trust me one last time. Emily wasn't acting alone. She was coached, controlled. Raymond Hale is the architect of everything that happened to our family. He used Emily's desperation for his approval as a weapon against me, against your mother, against all of us. Your mother knew. She's known for longer than she's willing to admit. I don't blame her. Raymond threatened her, threatened you and Becca. She was trying to protect what was left of our family the only way she knew how. But protection through silence only works for so long. By now, you've probably found evidence. The laptop, the letters. Maybe you've already started putting pieces together. Good. You're smarter than I ever gave you credit. For here's what you need to know. 1. Emily has a second laptop. The one you found is just the beginning. She keeps another one hidden, probably at Raymond's place or somewhere she thinks is safe. That one has the offshore account information, the real financial trail. 2. Raymond has been planning this for years, since before he contacted Emily. He's been watching us, studying us, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me. 3. Your mother has copies of threatening messages Raymond sent her. She's too scared to use them, but they exist. She keeps them in a safety deposit box at First National Bank under her maiden name. When the time comes, and you'll know when that is, I need you to do something for me. Finish what I started. Protect yourself from your stepsister. Protect yourself from the man she calls father. And most importantly, protect your little sister from ever becoming what Emily became. Don't let them get away with this. I love you more than words can say. Be brave, be smart, be better than all of us. Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat in the darkness, tears streaming down my face, and felt everything click into place. Dad knew. Before he died, he knew exactly what had happened, knew who was responsible, knew the danger we were all in, and he'd left me instructions. A roadmap to finish what he couldn't. The next morning, I went to Mom before she could leave for work. The safety deposit box, I said. Dad mentioned it in the letter. I need to see what's inside. Mom's face went white. You read it. Every word. I met her eyes. And now I need the rest of the evidence, the messages from Raymond, everything you've been hiding. I was trying to protect you, she whispered. I don't need protection anymore. I need justice. She stared at me for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. I'll take you after work. First National Bank was a 20-minute drive from our house. Mom signed us in, and we were led to a small private room with gray walls and fluorescent lighting. The bank employee brought the safety deposit box and left us alone. Mom opened it with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of printed emails, text message screenshots, voicemails transcribed onto paper, all from Raymond Hale. I started reading. If you tell anyone what Emily did, I will make you disappear. I've done it before. Your daughters are beautiful. It would be a shame if something happened to them. Mark's death can look like an accident, or it can look like suicide. Your choice. Keep your mouth shut and everyone stays safe. Simple. The messages went on and on. Years of threats, years of psychological torture. He sent these while Dad was in prison? I asked, my voice hollow. Mom nodded, tears running down her face. He wanted to make sure I never testified, never helped with the appeal, never told the truth. I felt rage build in my chest, white-hot and consuming. Why didn't you go to the police? Because I believed him, Mom said, her voice breaking. Because men like Raymond don't make empty threats. Because I was terrified that if I fought back, I'd lose you and Becca too. I put the messages back in the box carefully. Can I take these? Why? I looked at her. Because Dad was right. It's time to finish what he started. That night, I compiled the final dossier. Everything. The laptop evidence. Raymond's letters to Emily. The cash payments. Mom's written statement about the manipulation. The threatening messages from the safety deposit box. Dad's letter outlining the conspiracy. And the timeline showing Emily had planned everything 6 weeks before the first transaction. I organized it all into a comprehensive report, added a cover page, numbered the exhibits, made it look professional, official, undeniable. Then I drafted 2 emails. The first went to the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Subject: evidence in the Mark Carter embezzlement case. Request for investigation. I attached everything, explained the conspiracy, named Raymond Hale as the architect, named Emily Carter as the executor. I didn't send it anonymously this time. I signed it with my full name. The second email went to a reporter at the Denver Post who'd covered Dad's original trial, Sarah Chen. I remembered her byline, remembered how she'd written about Dad with a hint of skepticism, like she wasn't entirely convinced of his guilt. Subject: follow-up story. New evidence emerges in Carter case. I gave her everything too. Told her the whole story, from Raymond's manipulation to Emily's betrayal to Dad's suspicious death. I ended with a single line. My father died believing no one would ever know the truth. I'm making sure he was wrong. I stared at both emails for a long time. Sending them meant no going back, meant Emily would face real consequences. Prison, maybe, a criminal record, her life permanently destroyed, but it also meant Dad's name might be cleared. Meant Raymond couldn't hide anymore. Meant justice. Real justice. I thought about Dad's letter. Finish what I started. I thought about Emily's cold words. Sometimes someone has to fall. I thought about everything we'd lost, everything they'd taken from us. And I hit send. Both emails. Gone. The response came faster than I expected. Detective Maria Gonzalez from the Denver PD called me the next afternoon. Is this the daughter of Mark Carter? Yes. I've reviewed the materials you sent. Her voice was professional but careful. This is substantial. We're going to need you to come in and give a formal statement. When? Tomorrow, if possible. And we'll need to speak with your mother as well. I glanced at Mom, who was listening from across the room. We'll be there. One more thing, Detective Gonzalez said. Does Emily Carter know you filed this report? Not yet. Good, don't tell her. We'll be obtaining warrants for her laptop and her communications with Raymond Hale. We need the element of surprise. My heart pounded. You believe me. The evidence speaks for itself, she said quietly. Your father deserved better than what happened to him. We're going to make sure everyone knows that. That night, I sat at Dad's grave. The November wind was cold again, just like it had been at his funeral. But this time, I wasn't gripping a folded flag. I was gripping a copy of the police report, proof that the truth was finally coming out. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I finished what you started. The wind rustled through the bare trees. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a car door slam. I looked back toward the parking lot and saw a police cruiser pulling in. Then another, and another. They were heading toward our house, going for Emily. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my jeans. She thought she got away with destroying our family, I said quietly. But now she knows. I finished what my father started. I walked back to my car. Behind me, I could hear sirens in the distance. Justice, finally, was coming home. They arrested Emily at 3 a.m. I wasn't there to see it happen, but Mom was. She called me an hour later, her voice hollow. They took her, she said simply. The police. They had a warrant. They took her laptop, her phone, everything. Where is she now? Downtown, the Denver County Detention Center. Mom's voice cracked. She kept asking for Raymond. Kept saying he'd fix this, but he's gone. The police said he fled the state the moment they started investigating. Of course he did. Men like Raymond Hale don't stick around when their weapons stop being useful. Are you okay? I asked. Mom laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I don't know what okay means anymore. Neither did I. The news broke that afternoon. Former Cedar Ridge student arrested in father's embezzlement scheme. Sarah Chen's article ran on the front page of the Denver Post's website. She'd done exactly what I'd hoped. Investigated, thoroughly, presented the evidence clearly, and told the whole story. Raymond Hale's manipulation, Emily's role as executor, Dad's wrongful conviction, Mom's silence under threat. All of it laid bare for everyone to see. The comment section filled within hours. That poor man died in prison for something his own daughter did. How does someone live with themselves after destroying their family like that? I hope they throw the book at her. I read every comment, every opinion, every judgment, and I felt nothing. Just that same cold emptiness I'd been carrying since the day I found the laptop. Emily's arraignment was scheduled for Monday. The charges were substantial. Conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, aiding and abetting, obstruction of justice. Each count carried years of potential prison time. Her court-appointed lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, said Emily had been manipulated by Raymond, that she was a victim, too. But the prosecution had the spreadsheet, had the timeline showing premeditation, had the threatening messages Emily had sent to Mom after Dad's arrest, pressuring her to stay silent. Emily wasn't just a victim, she was a willing participant. The judge denied bail, called her a flight risk, given that her father had already disappeared. Emily would stay in the detention center until trial. I waited 2 weeks before going to see her. 2 weeks to let the reality sink in. 2 weeks to let her sit in a cell and understand what she'd lost. 2 weeks to decide if I even wanted to face her again. But I needed closure. Needed to look her in the eye one last time. The Denver County Detention Center was exactly as cold and institutional as I'd imagined. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and despair. They led me to a visiting room divided by thick plexiglass. I sat down and waited. When they brought Emily in, I barely recognized her. Her blonde hair was dull and unbrushed. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. Dark. Circles shadowed her eyes. She looked small, broken, nothing like the confident, calculated girl who'd smiled at Dad's funeral. She picked up the phone on her side of the glass. I picked up mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Emily said, her voice hoarse, "Why did you come?" "I needed to see you," I said quietly. "Needed to know if you felt anything at all." "I feel everything," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Every second of every day. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "I wanted to hear that you were sorry." "I am sorry," her voice broke. "I'm sorry for all of it. For Dad. For what I did to this family. For becoming exactly what Raymond wanted me to be." I studied her face, searching for the lie. The manipulation. But all I saw was genuine anguish. "You told me someone had to fall," I said. "That you chose your life over Dad's." Emily closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling over. "I was wrong. I was so... God, I was so wrong." "Why did you do it?" "Because I wanted him to love me," she said, her voice barely audible. "I wanted my father to be proud of me, to see me as strong, as worthy." She looked at me through the glass. "But he didn't love me. He never did. He just used me to hurt everyone else." "And by the time you realized that, it was too late." She nodded, covering her face with her hands. "Mark was a good man. He loved me when my own father couldn't, and I destroyed him." We sat in silence for a moment. The only sound was Emily's muffled sobbing. The prosecutor says I'm looking at 15 years, she said finally. Maybe more. I know. Do you feel better? Now that I'm here? Now that my life is over? I thought about the question. Really thought about it. No, I said honestly. I don't feel better. I just feel tired. Emily looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Then, why did you do it? Why destroy me if it doesn't even make you happy? Because Dad deserved the truth, I said quietly. Because what you did was wrong. Because someone needed to stand up and say that this, all of this, wasn't okay. So, it was justice. I don't know what it was, I admitted. Maybe justice, maybe revenge, maybe just necessary. Emily pressed her palm against the glass. I'm your sister, she whispered. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked at her hand. Remembered when those hands used to braid my hair. Used to hand me extra cupcakes. Used to make me feel safe. You were my sister, I said softly. But you stopped being that the moment you chose Raymond over our family. I know. She pulled her hand back. I know. A guard knocked on the door behind her. Time was up. Emily stood slowly, her shoulders hunched. For what it's worth, she said, her voice breaking. I hope you find peace. I hope this gives you what I could never find. I watched her walk away, watched the heavy door close behind her. The sound echoed through the room, final, permanent. And I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, and let myself cry for the sister I'd lost long before she ever went to prison. 3 months later, Emily pleaded guilty to all charges. Her lawyer negotiated a deal, 12 years in exchange for testimony against Raymond Hale, who'd been tracked down in Mexico and extradited back to Colorado. The state formally vacated Dad's conviction, posthumously cleared his name. It didn't bring him back. Didn't erase the 3 years he'd spent in prison. Didn't give us back the life we'd lost. But it meant the truth was official now. Mark Carter was innocent. And everyone knew it. I visit Dad's grave every Sunday. Now, same cemetery, same cold Colorado wind, same bare trees swaying in the distance. But it feels different now. I bring flowers, sit on the ground beside his headstone, tell him about my week, about Becca's soccer games, about Mom slowly learning to forgive herself. Today, I brought something else. His letter, the one he wrote before he died. I read it out loud, even though I've memorized every word. Finish what I started. I did, Dad, I said quietly, folding the letter carefully. I finished it. Emily's in prison. Raymond's awaiting trial. Your name is cleared. The wind picked up, rustling through the grass. But I need you to know something. I took a shaky breath. What I did? I don't know if it was right. I don't know if justice and revenge are really that different. I don't know if destroying Emily made me just like her. I traced his name on the headstone. Mark Andrew Carter, beloved husband and father. All I know is that you deserved the truth, and I made sure the world saw it. I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans. She thought she got away with destroying our family, I said, looking at his name one last time. But now she knows. I finished what my father started. I walked back to my car, carrying his letter with me. Behind me, the sun was setting over Cedar Ridge, the same small town that had once called my father a thief, that had whispered about us behind closed doors. But the whispers were different now. Now they knew the truth. And sometimes, in a world full of lies and betrayal and families torn apart by greed, sometimes the truth is the only justice we get. I drove home through the quiet streets, past the bank where it all started, past the high school where Emily used to be perfect, past all the places that used to hurt. They didn't hurt as much anymore. Not because what I did was right or wrong, but because I'd honored my father the only way I knew how, by making sure his truth outlived the lie.